OpsCode. That means that I talk about Chef and I help people solve their problems. So OpenStack, we've all been working with it. It's not the easiest thing to deploy. Chef tries to make it a little bit easier. We work with a lot of the people who are deploying OpenStack using the idea of infrastructure as code. Chef is, rather than have a configuration language toolkit, it's based on Ruby. So rather than have a domain-specific language, we're going to take the Ruby programming language and write out your infrastructure. The reason this is cool is because you can save it in your version control, have versions of it, roll back, roll forward, whatever you need to do, check it into version control. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about Chef. I'm just going to kind of move it quickly. But what's really useful about this is you can move your infrastructure from site to site, cloud to cloud, rebuild your cloud, change where you're at with nothing but your source code repository and data backups. It is configuration management, but it's also system integration and services integration. So a lot of the people I work with around OpenStack, they use Chef to stand things up, but they're also going to use Chef to tie in the logging, the monitoring, the billing, the moving around all the different services that are associated with your OpenStack deployment. OpenStack is, a couple of different silos of software, but there's a whole lot of support around it. Making your MySQL clusters work properly, setting up DRBD, all that fun stuff that comes with it. And people like Chef because of the license. The license is very flexible. It's Apache. We've got over 550 individuals that contributed source code now. That's growing rapidly. 100 contributors. 3 months ago, I had this slide. I had to update it from 370 and 70. So people are contributing code at a rapid clip. We're getting patches from lots of interesting folks. Dell, Rackspace, Heroku, EngineYard, RightScale, VMware. Lots of companies, they see Chef as their toolkit of choice because it helps them deploy their infrastructure. And cookbooks are how we deliver reusable components, whether it's a service, a software package, and there are over 400 different cookbooks available on our community site. They're being added, daily. New stuff is being added all the time. You can find a lot of, I hate to use the phrase best practices, but people who use Rails, 37 Signals wrote the Rails cookbook. People who use, React, Basho wrote the React cookbook. People who use Cassandra, DataStax wrote the cookbook. So you have vendors who are writing the cookbooks to support their software because this is what they choose. So let's talk about OpenStack. There are currently 3 flavors of cookbooks for OpenStack. There's the OpenStack cookbooks. These are the ones that I wrote for the Bear release. Anso Labs, the guys who originally wrote Nova. One of our guys went out to Anso and wrote cookbooks for deploying Bear. And Anso put those out on GitHub. I forked off those, stabilized them for multi-machine deployments off the Bear release, the stable release rather than trunk. That became what Crowbar uses. That's the lineage there. Mercado Libre was kind of in the news last 2 weeks or so. They're running 6,000 nodes on top of OpenStack. I worked with them off these same cookbooks. And HP, they've got a little deployment that's going to be unveiled quite soon. And I worked with them, same cookbooks, they forked them. They've really gone wild with them. What's nice about that is Apache licensed, Mercado Libre and HP didn't have to share, but a lot of good stuff came out of that. Crowbar, of course, is sharing it. And then I have a really extensive write-up about how it works. Fortunately, I haven't worked on it since Cactus because I've been working on Crowbar with the Dell guys and the Rackspace guys. So Crowbar is it's an OpenStack installer, it's a Hadoop installer, it's a data center installer. Essentially, they take Chef, they wrap it in a Pixie booting state machine for deploying hardware. So it controls IPMI and all that fun hardware stuff. And then it uses Chef as the database and the engine for configuring for configuring everything. Components for Crowbar delivered as bar clamps. Bar clamp is a wrapper for a chef cookbook with a UI. So Crowbar has a UI for clicking and moving and assembling all your infrastructure. It's just wrapped in Chef, and so Dell released it with an Apache 2 license. They've got a real community around it. There's an IRC channel where if you show up, I'll tell you how to join the Skype channel where the Dell guys are hiding. There's like 25 people in there now, and so it's not just Dell. People are deploying on HP. They're deploying on Quanta. They're deploying on other sorts of hardware, VMware and Fusion and all that fun stuff too. And so the cookbooks that are going over on that are being worked on by Crowbar, by Dell, for Crowbar, that's what Rackspace Cloud Builders is using. So Rackspace Cloud Builders, they know a lot about deploying OpenStack. This is part of their reference architecture. If you go to referencearchitectures.org, read about OpenStack, there's a whole section about deploying OpenStack. They're talking about Crowbar and Chef. And so this is where it lives on GitHub. Very active development, and that's what's going on with Crowbar. There is a
Matt, I'd probably add that the link that you showed there. Actually, if you do a /wiki, there's information there. If you do /videos, there's actually videos.
There you go. Yeah, and if you go to dell.com/OpenStack, you'll find some stuff about Crowbar.
And if you go to dell.com/crowbar, you'll find stuff about Crowbar.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So the third variant, which is really since the first one's deprecated, there's only two main variants, is OpenStack Chef. This has been continuous integration. There's about 4 or 5 different CI projects in OpenStack. The Ubuntu guys have one. There's a Puppet one. There's Smokestack one. Smokestack uses Chef, and it's also the source of the Vagrant cookbooks for deploying OpenStack on a laptop using Vagrant. Vagrant is a desktop VM management tool that uses Chef for managing the creation and destruction of VMs. So OpenStack Chef is tracking trunk aggressively. So that's the CI part. But there's also a stable fork. The stable fork, if you go to the GitHub account, it's supposed to be there. Right now it's over in JPipes' tree. JPipes is the PTL for Glance, and working on TriStack, which came out today. People started hearing about this. It's a new organization for sticking up OpenStack, letting people kick the tires, and seeing all the different ways that it can work. So right now, it's Diablo stable, running out of HP's labs, I believe, or is it Dell? I'm not sure. There's a lot of logos on there, and Equinix, and
it's actually running in I think Equinix data centers.
Okay.
And running on Dell gear.
Okay, it's on Dell gear, and the guys running it are from lots of different places, but they're using Chef to stand that up. They're using these cookbooks off of a Diablo stable branch, and so that's what's going on over at TriStack. And I am forking off of this. The reason it's important what I fork off of is because what I fork off of becomes the OpenStack, new branch, and that's where a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily going to go up into mainline is going to end up. If you have alternate implementations of Swift, like Ceph or Gluster, you'll probably end up in my tree. When Quantum rolls out, I've talked with most of the Quantum vendors. There will be multiple branches in there for supporting their stuff. That probably won't go upstream to the CI stuff because maybe not everyone has that hardware. And so that's my repo will become this whatever kind of stuff I work on with different people will end up over in there. So if and it really gets directed by whoever I'm working with lately, which I can't talk about. So deploying OpenStack, Chef ties this all together. That's kind of what's really powerful about Chef is we're going to configure the nodes that are running OpenStack. We're going to, if you're bringing up new compute nodes, we're going to tell them where the controllers are. If you're moving around your database, if it goes down, we'll rewrite the configuration files and let everything know where the MySQL cluster is moved, or the IP address. The HA configuration is wired together with Chef. So when you have a master slave, we don't have to go in and hard code anything. We just say, I need a master, I need a slave, and they'll find each other using the search that's built into Chef. And this is really compelling when you are starting to deploy at scale. If you're somebody like HP and you have a large infrastructure, if you're somebody like Mercado Libre where you have 6,000 nodes, this is where you really start to need search. You don't need somebody with a spreadsheet that they're trying to maintain by hand. You need the power of Chef. And obviously, scaling changes how we deploy. Somebody told me I have the best documentation for Chef and OpenStack out there, so I will keep trying to keep that up. And everything I write is licensed Apache, so I encourage you to use it because I know lots of other people are. And so we have our little community going on there. So Knife OpenStack. Knife is the command line tool for Chef. It is a tool for talking to APIs. It talks to the Chef server API. I can do things like list all the nodes that I'm managing, create them, delete them, change what they're running, change them from MySQL slave to master or whatever. But it also talks to APIs. It can talk to the OpenStack API, and that's what Knife OpenStack does. Knife OpenStack has a number of commands available to you. Knife OpenStack flavor, image, server, create, server delete, server list. You just need to configure it in your Knife RB. If you have a Chef workstation set up, there are 3 settings that you need: username, OpenStack username, OpenStack password, and the auth URL. I'm using Keystone. I've dropped support for the EC2 API. If somebody wants to write it, they can. I just felt like we should use the OpenStack API because it's Knife OpenStack. There is also a Knife EC2 if you want to go and make that work with your OpenStack setup.
Thank you for that.
Well, I'm going to complain about it pretty soon. And so the 2 sites that I was testing on are tristack.org, which we all heard about, and demo rcb.me. That's Rackspace Cloud Builder's demo site. Both of these are running Diablo stable. They're running slightly different variations of Diablo stable. Tristack.org is not using floating IPs, so if you request a node, it's on the internet. It doesn't have a private IP address. There's nothing private about it. It's out on the internet. Demo rcb.me has private IPs and floating IPs, which means you can fire up a bunch of instances and none of them are externally accessible until you attach the floating IP address to the public IP address. I don't have that working yet, automated through Chef, through Knife OpenStack, but it's kind of cool. Knife OpenStack flavor list lists the flavors that are available to you. If you're deploying different sizes, this is customizable. I haven't seen anybody change it yet, but obviously when we start getting into GPU setups and triple XLs and weird memory settings, this will change. Knife OpenStack image list. This is the list from tristack.org that are just running Natty and Oniric. The list for Rackspace is like 30 or 40 different types of images. They've got lots and lots of stuff like Windows and all that stuff. What's really cool about that is Chef manages Windows as well. So Windows is a first-class citizen for Chef. What that means is I can manage just about everything on a Windows box: services, users, file systems. Maybe not everyone's excited about that, but before the Hyper-V support was dropped, we were working on getting Hyper-V, OpenStack installed on Hyper-V with Chef. And so that kind of was getting kicked around, but nobody seems to care about Hyper-V anymore. But a lot of people do have Windows boxes.
Amazingly.
Yeah. So, Knife OpenStack server create. Node name, I used KO1, flavor 1, if you recall that's our MX small, or M1 small. Image 13, that was our Natty server cloud image. And dash capital S, TriStack, the name of my SSH key pair. And after you run that, you're able to say, hey, look, here's the instance that got fired up. Since this is on a TriStack, the public and the private are exactly the same. And if you log into the UI, you see all this fun stuff. You see our key name here, the ID, the nice details, the state is active. If you SSH to the box using the TriStack PEM, ta-da, it's an Ubuntu box. At no point did I have to go into the UI, click a new instance, and fire it up. I could throw this into GNU Parallel and have 60 of them. It's quite useful. And so that worked. What did not work is the bootstrap. When I use Knife OpenStack, when I use Knife OpenStack Server Create, typically this is bootstrapping the box. That means it's installing the Chef agent on the box. I'm still having trouble getting that to work because the fog support for the DNS name is kind of broken. But the machine gets provisioned with the right OS, but Chef doesn't get installed by hand. I have to use Knife Bootstrap to do that, usually. So now I say Knife Bootstrap, given the IP address, given the user ID, the username, sudo. I'm using the Omnibus installer, which is a Chef installer that has all of its dependencies. Goes and bootstraps that machine and installs the Chef client on it, puts whatever I want on it. Maybe I want this box to be Memcache. Maybe I want it to be MySQL. Maybe I need to go run a Rails stack on this box tied to 10 other ones. I'm now running infrastructure on top of OpenStack, and that's what's cool. I've been using the same tool chain to manage the OpenStack, the lower strata, and then I'm managing all the applications that are running on top of it. And that's what's really compelling about this is it's the same tool, and so I can fire up a Hadoop cluster on top of my OpenStack, or I can take, I can get rid of all those VMs and go run Windows on it if I need to, or I can mix it because that's the whole point of the cloud. Yay, bleeding edge. All this stuff is in GitHub. It's not been pushed upstream yet. I've been working with a number of folks on the fog support. If you all know Todd Wiley from Rackspace Cloud Builders, guy with the big, huge red beard, he's been really helpful. Dan Prince, formerly of Rackspace, is really helping me a lot too. So these patches are all waiting to get pushed up into fog because the Diablo stable support was not good. The Essex trunk support was great, but we deployed stable stuff around here. The Knife OpenStack stuff is in my GitHub. It will get pushed to Ruby gems soon. So what's next? Knife OpenStack roadmap. All those patches are going upstream. So if you're using Fog, if you're another, a lot of people use Fog. It's a Ruby library for talking to clouds and different APIs. The OpenStack support wasn't as great as it should be. There will be a wiki page for just Knife OpenStack. We have pages for Knife EC2 and Knife Rackspace and Knife Windows, but there will be a page just for Knife OpenStack. Bootstrap will get fixed probably in the next week, and I'll go and test it with the guys over at Dell to make sure it works with Crowbar. And once everything's stable, we'll push it up to Ruby gems. So instead of having to go through Git, you'll just be able to say Ruby gems, gem install Knife OpenStack. The Essex trunk support. I've been looking through the Essex code for Fog. It's a lot better than Diablo, so it should be fairly simple to get working. Security groups are not working yet, so it just grabs the default, which is fine for most people, but not everybody. And floating IP support is not quite there yet. Yeah. Oh, just waving. Chef roadmap. The Diablo release. The stuff that Crowbar has for Rackspace Cloud Builders, they're deploying that in production. People are going online with that. A lot of people in the community are using it, and that's stable. It's on GitHub. A lot of good stuff there. The cookbooks used by the OpenStack Chef guys. That's not as fully fleshed out for Diablo. They've been doing trunk instead of stable releases. But what's interesting there is Crowbar is using MySQL and KVM, and Chef and OpenStack Chef is using Zen and Postgres. So my repo will have both, because I'll pull from both of them and get you'll get to pick whether you're using KVM or Zen, and I'm working with some folks in town to get LXC support as well. Yeah, databases and HA support. Customer I'm working with is paying for HA support for these cookbooks, so everyone will get them. Yay. Red Hat, I have another customer who wants all this to run on Red Hat. And so that will be exciting and different. And another customer asked if we could port it to a Lumos. If you're not familiar with the Lumos, it's the Open Solaris fork that is now full-fledged, no longer associated with Oracle, and all the cool stuff is happening over there. And they've got a big patch set for Nova to add, Smart OS support, which is what Joint runs on top of. So that is a whole lot of talking. Any questions? Yes?
Where's your fantastic documentation?
My fantastic documentation is currently on the OpsCode wiki, wiki.opscode.com. It was just the readme.md, the markdown readme that was with my cookbooks. I'm going to keep it mirrored in both places and link them, so everyone can find out how all this stuff works together. And there will be, there's lots of graphs and diagrams and arrows and flow charts, and it's kind of helpful, rather than just slides. Huh.
Circles and arrows with writing on the back.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So, and the source for all that is also pushed up. So if you've got OmniGraffle, you can make your own arrows and say like, oh, it's over here now, and it works with other stuff too. Yes.
So you were able to fix the Diablo support? Is that correct?
Yes.
Am I assuming that is?
Yeah, that's all in my GitHub.
Okay.
And I've
So since we last talked, something happened.
Yeah, I've been hacking. I mean, literally, there were commits like an hour and a half.
Bootstrapping is busted?
Yeah, but
Because we're bootstrapping, and that's works fine. It's just the knife.
I dropped the EC2.
OpenStack plugin isn't working right.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. It's right now you have to do two steps. You can use Knife OpenStack to bring up a VM, and then use Knife Bootstrap to provision it.
Right.
Usually people are like, I want one step. I want to say Knife OpenStack, make me a MySQL. Make me a LAMP stack.
Yeah.
You don't want to say.
How does both independently work, but together they're broken?
When you say Knife OpenStack, it provisions the OS and says, here is an Ubuntu 11.10 box waiting for you, and your SSH keys are already on it.
Yeah.
When you say Knife Bootstrap, you say, here's my SSH key, that's the box I want, and it says, now managed by Chef. And typically, when you say Knife OpenStack Server Create, you say, provision me an OS and put my credentials on it and install Chef on it, and then you're done. So, yeah. And yeah, so it's a little thing, but if people who are familiar with the other cloud API tools for Knife, they want it all.
How does the Bootstrap manage Chef? Do you actually do file injection to get it managed, or you wait for it to come up and then SSH into it?
It actually waits for it to come up and SSHs into it and runs curl or wget, pull a script, and then runs that script. So there are people who will put the agent on it and snapshot an AMI and do that. We kind of we're not advocates of that. We're like always go with the most vanilla OS you can.
Yeah, I've been working on getting it to a vanilla image to boot up, and injecting some cron tab jobs in there, and then pull down DevStack and install it all. So you get vanilla image, but you get the one command Bootstrap as well.
Right. And we could definitely tie that into it, where when you call Bootstrap on a box, you can pass it a list of things to run. You pass it your Chef run list, and so I can say, that's what Crowbar is doing. Crowbar is taking a box, booting it up, and saying, hey, go install yourself an OS, and when you're done, put Swift on it, or Glance, or whatever. Yeah, so that's what's going on. I'll probably have a longer talk at the OpenStack Summit around this, and get the HP guys to talk and the Dell guys to talk, and I'll stand between them. So, anything else?
One quick
Yes.
question. Is there anything that ties in at the application layer, a notion of environment, where if I have an application that needs 3 web servers and 2 database servers, but also ties in with the OpenStack infrastructure, so I can tie in not only my application definition, what that might need, but also the OpenStack infrastructure definition? Or something that's available to me that ties both of those things and ties them together?
That sounds suspiciously like the project Donabe, where you're describing the sorts of things your infrastructure could support. Or is that what you mean? Or
What I mean is,
like an affinity for certain types of machines?
very specifically, if I have a department in my company that wants to define what type of infrastructure certain application wants to run in, and they want to define an environment, a version in essence, right?
Yeah.
Which is a cluster of things, and tie the infrastructure, the OpenStack infrastructure, with the application, and define it in a template that Chef recognizes, and then Chef would run,
Yes.
and deploy not only the infrastructure but the application.
Yeah. So you should talk to the InfoChips guys, because they have some tooling on top of Chef that extends that idea. But that's what environments are. Environments within Chef are how you declare, if you're running in this environment, like this sort of cluster, these are the versions of the cookbooks you're allowed to use. These are the resources that are available to you. These are the settings that any box in this infrastructure will get. So that's a lightweight version of what you're describing, and then Iron Fan, the product from InfoChips, which is also open source, takes that and applies it to the idea of building clusters. They're using it for big data stuff, but it could be it's really interesting stuff and could be applied into other fields.
And that's also
How's
inside.
that spelled? Sorry.
Iron Fan, IRONFAN.
So what about the other stuff?
Donabe, DONABE. It's I don't think there's any source yet. It's come up at the summits. It's the idea of having containers that describe a certain set of functionality.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's public code yet. There's a thread on the mailing list this week saying, "Hey, who wants to talk about Donabe?" Right. So, anything else?
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.